Exciting news! HCM PUM 53 is out. And what's exciting about that? It comes with PeopleTools 862, but wait, it gets even more exciting. They included an HCM implementation of a landing page. Now, landing pages are a feature that appeared in PeopleTools with PeopleTools 862. So if you already have PeopleTools 862, well, you already have the potential to create your own landing pages. But this may be the first PUM image I have seen with a delivered landing page. Now, I've had some reservations about landing pages, specifically in regards to performance. And the reason is because landing pages, the idea is to generate a dynamic experience for you, the logged in user. So each person logs in, well, of course they see different tiles. I mean, that's not dynamic really, that's security. But also the content is tailored to maybe the time of the year, what are the last links you clicked on, your most recently used items. So lots of dynamically generated content. My concern was, how does that impact performance? Because from a historical perspective with fluid tiles, we saw that the more dynamic tiles you have, the longer it takes for your homepage to load. So what happens when entire sections of a homepage become dynamic? Well, let's log in and find out. Nice. So I'm looking at a region at the top, which has suggestions for me as a manager. I have some approvals awaiting action. So that's important. Those are actionable items I need to complete now. So that makes sense to have that visible. Quick access. Okay. So these would be my typical tiles I would see. Looks like a combination of both, would you say employee and manager? And then down here, I definitely see some manager self-service. Oh, interesting. So if we look at the content, you might say that these are a collection of tiles from what we might have called in the past homepages. So looking at the drop-down list, which is still there, I've got a manager self-service, employee self-service, and then workforce admin, talent, and recruiting. So we have here manager self-service, and then we have the recruiting. So we have items from each of those different homepages, but rendered here as different regions within the landing page. Interesting. So in the past, we would have, say, for example, from the employee self-service homepage, clicked on the personal details tile, and that would have taken us to the personal details dashboard. So let's see what happens when we click on personal details. Wow, that actually loaded up really fast. I can see that there is some dynamic content here. And even though there's dynamic content, I did not see any sort of a performance issue. But interesting. So in the past, we would have clicked and it would have drilled us to a dashboard. And, I kind of think it still does. But we don't necessarily call it a dashboard. We'll call it a landing page. But really, what is a dashboard? Well, a dashboard is just a homepage that's not rendered in the drop-down list. Somebody checked a box to mark it as a dashboard. So what is a landing page? It's a homepage with regions. So whether it's a dashboard, whether it's a landing page, whether it's a homepage, from a metadata perspective, underneath in the portal registry, it's all the same thing. It's just rendered differently and interesting. What about responsive design? Meaning, as I resize the window, does the content reflow to fit the shape of its container? And if so, how does it reflow? So right now I've got personal demographics that's rendering as a single column. And in the middle, we have the contact and other details, and they're rendering as 2 columns. Now I'm kind of wondering, what happens if we shrink our screen to represent a larger monitor? It didn't change. Okay, let's go back to the default. And then on the right, we also have, again, a single column. So what's going to happen? Personal details, personal and demographics, it is single column on the left, and then single column on the right. And let's see what happens as we resize this window. Okay, so a single column on the right becomes dual column. And interesting in the center, because you notice there are 2 sections in the center right now. But when I move, the one from the right actually merged into the middle. And then the other one took up 2 columns suddenly at the bottom. That's interesting. Let's keep changing the size. Ooh. And now what was on the left now becomes 2 columns. Interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how they generated this. For example, what style classes are behind this? And that's the fascinating thing is you and I can replicate this by using the delivered style classes. We don't need to write our own CSS. And that's one of the beauties, one of the amazing features of landing pages is that you and I can write our own CSS to have full control over the experience on the homepage. But we don't have to write our own. We can leverage what they're delivering. And for the most part, I encourage us to leverage their CSS. The more CSS we leverage, the less we have to maintain. I love writing CSS, but I know that the more CSS I write, the more I have to maintain. So I want to take advantage of their CSS. Let's return home. And from the home page, let's take a look at the benefits, pay, and time, because I'm expecting it to have a lot of dynamic content as well. And in fact, it does. And you watch as it loads, it did load like the static content first and then replace that with dynamic content. So it looks like there are a lot of similarities here, meaning a lot of the content you and I may have created over the last decade for Fluid still plugs into these landing pages. So that's important. That's valuable. We are just a couple of days from kicking off the PeopleSoft Reconnect Dive Deep virtual conference. And at that conference, I have a session on People Tools 862 and Campus Solutions. And one of the things I want to talk about in that session is how you and I can use landing pages to improve the experience for our Campus Solutions users, whether they're students, whether they're faculty, whether they're advisors, or even back office administrators. See you there.